The story of Princess Diana begins long before she became a global icon. Born on July 1, 1961, at Park House in Sandringham, Diana Frances Spencer entered a world of privilege, but also of emotional complexity. Her childhood was marked not by royal glamour, but by a turbulent family environment that would shape her heart and personality forever. Diana was the third daughter and fourth child of John Spencer and Frances Shand Kidd. Even though the family belonged to the British aristocracy, the Spencer household was far from peaceful. When Diana was just a young girl, her parents' marriage fell apart. Their separation cast a shadow over her early years. Diana would later say that this emotional upheaval gave her a deep understanding of pain and loneliness, an understanding that would one day make her the people's princess. She grew up shy, sensitive, and eager to make others feel seen and valued. Unlike many aristocratic children, she wasn't overly interested in titles or formalities. Instead, she loved dancing, swimming, caring for animals, and playing with children. Despite struggling academically, Diana displayed remarkable emotional intelligence. Teachers and friends described her as compassionate, gentle, and deeply observant. Her teenage years were spent between various boarding schools, including West Heath Girls' School. Though she did not excel academically, she found joy in community work and especially in caring for the young and elderly. She dreamed of becoming a ballerina, but at nearly 5 feet 10, she felt she had grown too tall for a professional career. Yet the grace, softness, and discipline she developed in ballet stayed with her throughout her life. After finishing school at 16, Diana moved to London and shared a flat with friends. She took small jobs, a nanny, a dance instructor for children, and a nursery school assistant. She lived simply, ironing her own dresses, cooking basic meals, taking the bus to work. No one could have imagined that this quiet, kind-hearted young woman would soon become one of the most photographed faces on earth. Her life changed when she caught the attention of Prince Charles. Diana had known the royal family since childhood, but now she was a young woman, timid, polite, and adorably shy in front of cameras. The press quickly took an interest in her. At just 19, the pressure of being thrust into the spotlight was overwhelming. Reporters waited outside her apartment, cameras flashed constantly. Yet she handled it with grace beyond her years. Charles was 12 years older than Diana and already a global figure, expected to marry someone suitable for the future king. After a brief courtship filled with media frenzy, their engagement was announced in February 1981. Millions around the world watched the moment, fascinated by the seemingly fairy tale romance. On July 29, 1981, Diana walked down the aisle at Westminster Abbey wearing a gown of ivory silk and antique lace, with a 25-foot train that made history. Her wedding was watched by an estimated 750 million people across the globe, one of the biggest television broadcasts of all time. When she said, "I do," she not only married Charles, but also stepped into a life that would never again be ordinary. But behind the shimmering facade, the reality was far harder. Royal expectations were suffocating. Diana was suddenly expected to adopt traditions, responsibilities, and pressures for which no training could truly prepare her. Each step she took was observed, criticized, or exaggerated by the press. Her marriage, too, was strained from the beginning. Charles's long-standing connection with Camilla Parker Bowles cast a painful shadow over the early years of their relationship. Still, Diana devoted herself to her role. She traveled the world representing the crown, and people quickly fell in love with her warmth. She broke royal barriers, literally and symbolically, by hugging children, shaking hands with AIDS patients without gloves, and sitting on hospital beds to comfort the sick. At a time when HIV/AIDS was feared and misunderstood, her simple act of human touch challenged global stigma. She became a symbol of compassion overnight. In 1982, she gave birth to Prince William, and in 1984 to Prince Harry. Motherhood changed her profoundly. She adored her boys and went out of her way to give them as normal a life as possible. She insisted on doing school drop-offs, taking them to amusement parks, and letting them experience life outside palace walls. Diana often said, "I want my boys to know emotions, and I want to give them an understanding of people's suffering." Her marriage, however, continued to deteriorate. The emotional distance between Charles and Diana grew wider, and the pressure from the media became relentless. Diana struggled privately with depression, anxiety, and the crushing loneliness she felt behind palace doors. Yet she kept working, visiting hospitals, shelters, orphanages, and charities. Her humanity shone even brighter as her personal life darkened. In the early 1990s, rumors of marital conflict became public. In 1992, Charles and Diana formally separated. The royal fairy tale had cracked wide open, and the entire world was watching. But this was not the end of Diana's story. In fact, it was the beginning of a new chapter, where she would redefine herself, her purpose, and her legacy. This leads us to part 2, the final and most powerful era of her life. After separating from the royal family, Diana entered a period of profound transformation. Without the rigid structure of palace life, she began rediscovering who she truly was, an independent woman with a fierce desire to serve humanity. The world expected her to retreat quietly, but instead, she stepped forward stronger than ever. One of the most defining aspects of her post-royal life was her humanitarian work. Free from many of the constraints that once limited her, Diana became involved in causes other public figures avoided. She visited hospitals for terminally ill patients, spent hours comforting individuals with HIV/AIDS, and supported charities that dealt with homelessness, drug addiction, and domestic violence. Her empathy was not symbolic, it was deeply personal. She listened to people, held their hands, and looked into their eyes with genuine care. But perhaps her most historic work was her campaign against landmines. In 1997, she traveled to Angola, a country torn apart by war. Images of her walking through active minefields wearing protective gear shocked the world. This was not ceremonial work. She was risking her life to draw attention to a global crisis. Her courage ignited international pressure that eventually contributed to the signing of the Ottawa Treaty banning landmines. Diana was no longer just a princess. She had become a global force, someone who used her voice not for royalty, but for the voiceless. Despite her success, the media refused to leave her alone. Every move she made became headlines. Paparazzi followed her in cars, on motorcycles, and even by boat. She was aware of the danger, but she had little control over the chaos surrounding her. In 1997, Diana began spending time with Dodi Fayed. Their companionship sparked even greater media frenzy. Paparazzi chased them relentlessly, on beaches, outside hotels, even in restaurants. Diana wanted peace and privacy, but the world around her had become a stage she could never step off. Then came the night that would change history. On August 31st, 1997, in Paris, Diana and Dodi left the Ritz Hotel in a car driven by Henri Paul. They attempted to evade the paparazzi waiting outside. As they entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the vehicle crashed at high speed. The world woke to devastation. News channels announced her passing with trembling voices. People everywhere cried openly, across Britain, across Europe, across the entire world. Diana was just 36 years old. The reaction to her death was unlike anything seen before. Outside Kensington Palace, flowers formed mountains. People lined the streets, leaving handwritten notes, teddy bears, and candles. Many said they felt as if they had lost a family member. For a week, the nation mourned, its grief public, overwhelming, and undeniable. On September 6, 1997, her funeral took place. Over 2.5 billion people watched. It was one of the largest global broadcasts of all time.
The most heartbreaking image was of two young boys, William and Harry, walking behind their mother's coffin. Their bowed heads became a symbol of innocence touched by unimaginable pain. Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, delivered a powerful eulogy, calling her the most hunted person of the modern age. His words reflected the struggle she endured, loved by millions, yet relentlessly pursued by the press. But even in death, Diana changed the world. Her passing forced governments to examine media ethics. It made the royal family reconsider emotional connection with the public, and it inspired a new generation of humanitarian activism. Today, her legacy lives on not only through charities and global initiatives, but also through her children. Both William and Harry have carried forward her compassion, continuing work in mental health, poverty, and humanitarian relief. Her influence is embedded permanently in the heart of modern philanthropy. Diana taught the world that kindness is power, that compassion can break barriers, and that even in the darkest places, one gentle touch can bring hope. She was more than a princess, more than a public figure, more than a headline. She was a mother, a humanitarian, a symbol of empathy, a beacon of hope. In her 36 years, she transformed millions of lives and continues to do so today through the legacy she left behind. Even now, decades later, the world remembers her as the same radiant soul who stood with the vulnerable, who loved unconditionally, and who reshaped the meaning of royalty. She will forever be the Princess of Hearts, the woman the world simply knew as Lady Diana.